Hey, everybody, welcome to the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 184. The whole crew is here today, John, Logan, and Phil. On today's episode, we have a design throwdown for our listeners over at Blue Spruce Tools and Saw Making. Logan and Phil both have some new tools to show off and talk about. John's got some new projects that he's working on. And Logan decides to cross swords with George Nakashima. That's all coming up on today's episode. This one's brought to you by Grizzly Tools. They're one of our new sponsors for season 18 of the Woodsmith Shop. You'll see a lot of their new tools in our videos at Woodsmith, as well as our weekly shop update that you do. They've got the full range. We have a small benchtop drill press to milling machines, sanders. The big one in our shop that's been getting a lot of attention is the oscillating spindle sander, if only for the fact that it's a cool floor-mounted version, and I have two words to go with it: oil bath. There you go. So you want to check out all of their stuff, grizzly.com. Okay, so Popwood recently did a saw-till project, hovering in the background over Logan's shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah. Woodsmith has one as well, but it takes a different course in that the one that Chris designed is for Japanese saws. He has it housing 3 Japanese saws. And then to go along with it, over my last couple of evenings, I read the book by George Nakashima, The Soul of a Tree. And on the cover of that book, the one that I'm holding up here, I'll put a photo of it on the show notes page. And in the book a few times, and on that sawtill, we have, I'm going to butcher the name and I apologize for it, an azabiki. The, flower petal shaped saw for use when, sometimes called like a mortising saw, for being able to start a cut in the middle of a panel. So it's got a really sharply curved blades. The Japanese one has like a rip teeth on one side, cross-cut teeth on the other. And this is my question for, I know we have listeners in the saw makery over at Blue Spruce. I think that's the word for it, right? That's what it is.
I think that's, yeah. I would call it the Saw Foundry, but that's just me.
Saw Foundry, there we go. Haberdasher of saws. Jared and his kin over there.
Yep.
How come there isn't a Western version of that saw?
There is. It's called a circular saw. Plunge cut. Didn't Porter Cable make all those attachments for your drill that had saw blades on them, and some of them were tiny little bitty circular saw blades? It's probably what they're for.
Probably, yeah. I mean, on the set, our old video set, we had what was it? An Atkins flooring saw.
Yep.
That was kind of yeah.
We got a lot
of questions doing a video on that. I'll put a link to that on there. I think that's still on our YouTubes, in the tubes somewhere. But that's just a question that I have. Why isn't there a Western version of that saw? Also, can Jared and them make one? Does it need to have crosscut and rip teeth on it? No, I don't think so. I think you could get away with one or the other.
Okay, so when realistically would you use it? Is my question.
Okay. I would say in the same ways that a Japanese carpenter / woodworker would use it. So Mr. Nakashima, George, let's call him.
Okay.
He would use it for, oddly enough, he would use it for cutting the recesses for butterfly keys. Okay. He would they call it a mortising saw. So if you are going to create a mortise on the interior of a panel or board or a tabletop or something like that, you could start it with that. Or I was also thinking, if you're hand cutting stopped dados.
Okay.
Where you could use that to start and or finish the cut. Is it a specialty tool? Yeah, but let's take a look at all of the specialty tool gadgets and gizmos aplenty that are available that meet very specialized needs. I would think that you could make a case for that kind of a saw just as well as you could for pick any other thing. It's just a question I have. I'm not saying that it needs to be there. It's just curious that it's very prominent in Japanese woodworking, and that the equivalent of that saw doesn't exist here.
I feel like I have seen one of those saws like somewhere.
As a Western saw?
No. Definitely, you know, the Asian style pull saw.
Right.
I can't think for the life of me where I would have seen it. Because they have a very small blade that like that big, right?
Right. Yeah, it's only
and
a few
very
inches
curved.
Yes.
It almost looks like a spear that's had the tip nipped off. Like that type of shape. Right. Yeah.
Or the unholy offspring of a butterfly and a throwing star.
That's true. I thought it was a butterfly knife.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That would be interesting. I don't know. Like, that's the type of tool that after you use it, it'd be like, okay, I get it, but I don't really have a need or desire to have one.
Says the guy with 28 saws over his shoulder.
Okay, can't argue with that. Nate, if we could blur this out in post, that would be great.
Touche.
Yep.
Like I said, it was just a curiosity because I could see places where, I mean, it's like a coping saw. Like, how often does a person actually use a coping saw?
That's fair. Yep, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I get it.
Anyway,
although, you know,
just
we did decide last night that Mr. Nakashima is wrong. So
right. Yeah, which brings up my second point from the book, because I was reading this is the best part about working with other woodworkers is being able to contact them almost instantly. So one of the chapters in the book, The Soul of a Tree, is on timber, as he calls it, and how logs are converted into usable material. I just happen to know a sawyer, and there was this quote that just gets better the more you read it. Cutting logs entails a great responsibility, for we are dealing with a fallen majesty. There are no formulas, no guidelines, but only experience, instinct, and a contact with the divine. Commercial grade sawing by rolling the log, unquote, the method used with almost all hardwoods in this country, is one of the most barbaric of practices. No attempt is made to bring out the log's inherent beauty. No slice is wide enough to do justice to the tree's figures and graining. The potential of the log is lost, and it ends up only as expensive yet uninteresting lumber. Quarter sawing parallel to the rays which radiate from the log's center, is also popular. And it too is undesirable, since it is wasteful and also fails to make full use of the log's width with its great potential for spectacular graining. It goes on from there.
Now, I will reiterate exactly what I said to Phil last night when he texted me that. George Nakashima is dead, and I'm not. Is it a coincidence? Did the lumber mafia, the White Oaks, did they take him out? Maybe.
Is that like the Van Buren boys from Seinfeld?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now,
so what's his answer then? If you
then I'm a barbarian. I'm a barbarian. He wants it just slabbed straight through.
Yeah, he just wants it by the bool or through and through or whatever you want to call it, where you just
whack it into slabs.
Yeah,
because that takes a lot of skill, Mr. Nakashima.
And he does go on in there talking about how the skill is in where you make those first cuts, depending on, where branches come out or where there might be knots, so that you end up, limiting which boards have a knot in them, as opposed to having the knot runs, straight through all of your boards.
Yeah.
And you've done plenty of sawing that way.
I've done a lot of it that way. Yeah. I don't like to, but for speed,
why is that?
Well, for speed's sake, it's great because you just put the log up there, position it how you want it, and you start cutting. Okay. So I can take a 20-inch diameter walnut log, and I can just slab that to 2-inch thick or 2.5-inch thick pieces in 5 minutes. Right. Very easy.
Right.
There's a few problems with that I have, and the reason I don't generally do that. Well, first of all, the market's actually better for live edge slabs like that because you can always take the live edge off, right? So you generally appeal to more people. They're faster to cut, but they're also heavier because they are bigger pieces. Okay. Now, what also happens is you have a log that you're stacking versus boards. Okay. I could stack a whole lot more trees in a 4-foot wide by 12-foot long chunk of ground than I can logs.
Right. Because you're just basically logs.
Yeah. You're getting tippy as you get taller. There's just some issues. Okay. I can load up, as long as my boards are the same width or the same thickness, I just stack clear to the ceiling, right? As high as I can reach. Can't do that with logs because they like to tip. Ask me how I know that. I had a lot of logs fall over. And then my other issue with that is the fact that the bark and sapwood generally tend to be where insects are going to live. Now, we don't have powder post beetles here in Iowa. We don't fight a lot of those bugs that some of the southern warmer states have, but we still get borers. So by removing a lot of that sap and the bark, by making it into a cant and then slicing boards off, I am removing most of that appealing habitat. So that's my thoughts. Now I get what George is saying, because an entire chunk of a tree tells much more of a story than a board. Because if I take a walnut tree and I cut it, there's never going to be a walnut tree that looks like that one. That's a unique piece of material.
Right.
But if I turn a walnut log into boards, I can find another board that looks exactly like that walnut. I mean, hue might be a little different, but it's a board at that point, right? So yeah. I get it, but to call it barbaric is a very, very mundane way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of offensive.
To us barbarians. Yeah.
It's offensive to barbarians. Yeah.
Barbarians are people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I just thought it was very, very interesting to me, because throughout the book, he comes across as a very low key, mellow soul.
Until you get him on cutting methods.
Until you get him on log conversions, then all of a sudden he's got feelings.
I'd like to know what Mr. Nakashima's opinion was on imperial versus metric. because that's really where we're going to find out what kind of man he was.
Yeah. He uses metric imperial measurements quite often in the book. So
it's not doing him any favors. Not in my book.
Yep. All right. So there we go. We just know that somewhere in the near future, Logan's going to be writing a book as a counterpoint to The Soul of a Tree.
Never have had a desire to do that.
At least a diss track.
There's
for sure.
It's like that movie Julie and Julia. So it'll be like the same thing except Logan and George. I will say though, it's kind of interesting to see because I was looking through that book and then I was looking at a project idea for my home shop, and we have the Sam Malouf's book, Sam Malouf, a woodworker. And both of those guys had really distinct and interesting drawing styles. Yeah. And how they both had art backgrounds to a certain extent. So it was fun looking at George Nakashima's pencil drawings that he has scattered throughout the book that are really quite compelling, not only of trees, but places he lived and stuff like that. Kind of cool. Would like to know if anybody else out there has ever read George Nakashima's book and what you thought of it. It goes right along with some of James Krenov's writings, I feel, in terms of style and approach. Because Nakashima, in a couple of places in the book, he talks about how having each board has only one ideal use for it. And if it's not used for that, it's been wasted.
Pompous. Some might say. I don't know
Some
who. Somebody.
Yeah.
I've heard.
You're not saying it, but some people might say it.
I've heard it.
And I know that Krenov has either said very similar things or implied it in other things too, which is also kind of funny because it seems like a lot of the trees that Krenov came across really wanted to be made into cabinets on stands.
Weird.
Yeah. So there you go. Anybody else read Soul of a Tree? I would like to know your thoughts of it. Post your mini review in the description section on our YouTube channel or send me an email. That'd be really cool. Have either of you guys read it?
Negative. Yeah.
I'm waiting for the movie to come out.
The Wrong Way to Saw a Tree. That's the title. That's the working title.
Yeah.
Although if it was John's movie, it'd be more like Saw It Wrong or something.
Yeah.
All right. John, what do you got working on?
Right now I am trying to finish up a workbench for the next ShopNotes magazine. It's kind of interesting because I am designing a base around a top that's already built. So a few issues ago, Chris designed a twin vise and mocked up a top for photography. And I was just like, hey, don't throw that top away. We can build a whole workbench around it. So now I'm designing backwards, I guess, for that.
That's cool.
So just trying to save the builders some work.
There you go.
Know, save it from the dumpster. Mm-hmm. Logan tried to send it there last week.
I've tried many times. I think it was the third time I tried to dumpster it.
Yeah. So I got that going.
That was the vice was that skeleton watch vice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So working on that.
Which is actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's interesting because I think as you use it, you can feel, because there was one version made by Andy Klein. Is that the right name?
I think so. Yeah.
And his is all machined and whatever, but then the one Chris did is all plywood gears and stuff, and you can feel there's an interesting feel as you spin it. You can feel like the mechanical clicks, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of therapeutic. As I stood there for 30 minutes unwinding it to try to get it out of the workbench top. And
now I got to put it back.
Yeah. Sorry.
What I thought was kind of cool, I mean, obviously there's if you're not familiar with the project, it's a twin screw vise, but exposed on the front and all clockwork gears. So it's got that real fun, almost steampunk look to it that as you start turning the handle, you can see all these gears moving around on the inside.
Yeah. There's like a train of gears that connect the pair of handles.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you go going really fast, the handle you're not holding onto will whap you, because did that once.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Although I would almost advocate for, I think the Lee Nielsen twin screw vise that they sold for a while.
Yep.
You could do just like a dummy handle on the other side.
Yeah.
So it was really just one handle, but it would still turn both sides.
Yeah.
But then you didn't have this like dancing swords kind of thing just flopping around. So all right.
The other thing I'm working on is a child's play table.
Okay.
Woodsmith. So would have been nice for me maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So a little late on that.
Is it gonna be? Are we talking like Lego table style?
That's the way I'm
or
kind
like
of
train
going.
style.
Yeah, something like that would be, for a small child that put toys in, whether it's Legos, train set, blocks, puzzles.
Yeah.
It's kind of a small version of the game table, I guess.
Yeah,
like that type of thing that we just did recently, where you can, cover it up, set things in. Might include a little toy box bench to go with it.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. So
but that would be cool.
See, those are the types of projects that, as parents, I think all are like, that's cool. Like, it's not like the most exciting thing. Like, it's not building a twin screw vise for your workbench, but it's one of those, like, that will be a popular project that a lot of guys will build.
Yeah.
Or women.
Or grandparents, for
100%.
grandkids or that kind of thing. So, but yeah. So
no, I could see that because both of my kids played with. We had a table that I think was with a train set, the little wooden stick together, make your own tracks kind of things, and I mean they used it for 1,000 other things too, but that was definitely really cool.
Yeah, those were definitely.
We had.
I was gonna say those were definitely Legos, train sets. Like I think were definitely toys I like to play with the kids because you gotta build stuff and then you're like, hey, don't take my parts. I'm building here.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build their own thing.
I will say we had a Thomas the Train table that my aunt had bought for her kid. And it was I know how much she spent on it, and it was astronomical. And for how crappy the table was, it's like, man, like you're paying for all the European beach that all the train parts are made out of, but not the table. Like the table is like it felt, and it was part of the kit, but it was like, this is like a Target knockdown. I bought this for my dorm room table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
So
it's like if you take spit and mixed it with sawdust and then like pressed it together real hard.
That's 100%.
First time you spill a juice box on it,
it triples in size.
Oh, that's funny.
So there's your test, John, is making sure that it's juice box proof.
Yep, for sure.
Although the other what I thought was interesting about having that table, especially with our second child, was how it turned into a learn to walk aid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hold on to it and walk around it. Yep.
Yeah. Stand up and move around. And
You know what? Yeah. Talking about juice boxes and particle board, what if we built the whole thing out of a Nature Valley granola bar?
There'd be crumbs all over.
But it would be delicious.
Yeah. Depends on the finish you put on it, I guess. This one's brought to you by Grizzly Tools. They're one of our new sponsors for season 18 of the Woodsmith Shop. They've got the full range. We have a small benchtop drill press to milling machines, sanders. So you want to check out all of their stuff, grizzly.com. All right. Well, those are cool projects.
Yeah.
It's like a workbench for kids and a workbench for the parents or grandparents who will build the projects for the kids.
There you go.
I like it. Logan, you have a new tool to talk about.
I got a couple new tools.
A couple new tools. All right.
Well, yeah. One. So Pat was here last week. I think we talked about that on the podcast. I don't know if we aired that podcast or not, but Pat was here. So while he was here, and I have a 7.5 foot tall leprechaun at my disposal, I had him help me move that Powermatic lathe that I bought from our shop into my shop. So that's my first new tool. I bought new switches for it, and it's still just not right. The switches now work okay, but something's still weird in the programming. So like something's messed up somewhere internally with that VFD. So
do you need a new VFD for it? Or
I think so. I think so. I bought like $20 worth of switches, wired them back up. So the switches are there and as they should have been, but it just is not like you should be able to control it with either the remote or the switch on the face of it. But somehow that face switch is not letting it shut off like it should. So something is weird in the VFD programming. I don't know. I might be able to reprogram it. I haven't dug into it yet. I'm not worried about it just yet, but I got that moved into place, which was cool. So that means the Koenig needs to leave. We talked about that. Pat convinced me to get rid of the Koenig. So I emailed that out to the Des Moines Woodturners the other day. Nobody's bid on it yet, so it will be going on Facebook Marketplace fairly soon. And yeah, so I had a Tormek in a couple of months ago for an article, and it was cool. Tormek wanted it back, and that's cool. Like that's usually what I offer is to send it back. So they had sent me like I think a refurb or a demo demo one. So that got sent back, and I was like, you know what? That was really nice to have here. I had an off-brand Tormek. It was a different maker, and it was about a quarter of the price of a Tormek, and you could tell it was a quarter of the price. The wheel had some run out. It just didn't work as well. It had forward and reverse, which was kind of nice, but and I sold that probably 3 years ago. That was one of those, like, I bought it from the Woodsmith store with, Woodsmith bucks from teaching seminars. It was one of those types of things. So I didn't really have anything into it. It was worth trying. But then I found on one of the wood turning groups I'm on, a guy was selling this grinder. And I messaged him, said, "Hey, I'm interested in that Tormek." He was asking, it's fairly unused, but it's been used a little bit. So he was asking what I thought was a fair price. And he had mentioned in his post that he was selling it to buy a few new tools. I was like, "Well, what are you looking for?" Because I got a lot of turning tools. Like,
you got some inventory.
Well, it's like I've bought lots of turning tools over the last couple of years. Mainly to get like 1 or 2 of the tools in the lot. Like the last one I bought, I got like 38 gouges, and I only bought it because there was it's called a Kelton, McNaughty Kelton corer. So it's like for making a bowl blank, and you can cut out 3 bowls out of that one bowl. And I paid what that Kelton is new. I paid that for all of the tools. So it's like, I don't really have a whole lot into these tools. So long story short, I ended up trading him a couple 6 or 7 gouges and parting tools and stuff like that for that guy. So I'm pretty excited about that. My plan was I bought that workbench companion that was in a recent issue of ShopNotes. My plan was to set that up next to my bench over here as like a sharpening station. So I was going to put the Tormek on there, my diamond stones, have some storage underneath. But Pat said, "Hey, you know what this would be really good for is like a little carving station for turning. Like put the Fordham on there, put the, all my paints and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? It really would." And then I could kind of roll it around wherever I want. So it kind of got taken by that. So I'm going to have to find a spot for this Tormek. I could put it by my grinder for my turning tools, but that's in a spot where shavings kind of get sprayed on it. So, I kind of want to keep this a little nicer. So I will find use for it somewhere.
Okay.
But then the other thing that I got recently, I bought it probably 9 months ago. I bought it just to touch up some paint on some of these tools that I have. Like, I told you guys my story about my automotive paint for my Vic Mark. And I don't have a super nice like spray gun, and I don't have a really good way to spray it. So I had bought this guy, okay? So this is more or less an airbrush. And you guys saw this, I think, last week when Pat was here. This is by a company called Grex. They make a lot of random stuff, but they make this really nice like cup spray gun. So this is an airbrush, more or less, with a pistol grip on it and a cup, which is like a bigger cup than a standard, airbrush has a tiny little cup for like doing t-shirts and whatever. This thing
model
is
making and whatever.
Yeah. This thing is freaking fantastic. Like, I know if I showed Steve, he's an airbrush enthusiast, like he'd be like, oh, it's not a, I want an airbrush. Oh, he would. But for what this cost, which, I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like a super expensive airbrush. This thing works fantastic. I've been spraying some smaller stuff in here. Like, I had a couple of Pat's demo pieces left that I was spraying some of the like patina finishes on. This thing is freaking fantastic. Like, it's so easy just to hook it up. I have a cheap Amazon airbrush air compressor. It's not big enough for this thing, so I actually bought fittings last night at Menards to hook this up to my regular air compressor. But there's like no overspray. It's super precise, so you can like not have a ton of overspray. You can get paint right where you want it. This is one of my new favorite finishing things. Now, am I gonna finish an entire sideboard with this thing? No, that's not what it's for.
Right.
But if I'm spraying like lacquer on a turned piece, I can do it on the lathe with this thing. Just hook up next to my air hose that's next to the lathe and use this. So I am super happy with this thing. It's one of those things that I bought and I hadn't used, and now that I use it, I'm like, where else can I use this? Like, so
can you spray shellac with it?
Maybe.
I would think you could.
Good news.
Yeah. I mean, but shellac does come in a can.
Yeah,
so.
That's true.
But it would be way more economical to spray it that way.
Yes,
buying
it would.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because when Pat was here and he did the patina paint that he uses is a company called Chromacraft. They're down, I think, in Georgia or something. There is a primer you put on, let dry. Then there is a metallic paint. So the paint, it's interesting because this paint's really heavy. You can see one of the pieces right there behind me. The primer is really heavy because it actually has like bronze or iron or copper inside of the paint. So it's interesting because it's definitely heavier than just paint.
Do they have a lead version?
I don't know if they have the lead version or not yet. But you spray that on, and then while it's wet still, you spray on like a chemical to patina it. And when Pat was doing the stuff on video, he was globbing paint on, like the primer and stuff. He was like, give him a roller because he was just putting on thick. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, that stuff was kind of expensive. So like, I sprayed it and it's so much better. Or I mean, it's not better, but it's definitely does not use near as much when you spray it with like this little guy. Even having to wash the cup out, it's not bad.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah, I was super happy with it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I like it. And I talked about this in our last podcast, but I got in the mail my little drill press vise, which I don't have with me, but I'll put photos up for it. It's a little Yankee 991, I don't know, drill press or tool maker's vise, depending on how you want to call it. And what I thought about, at first I was looking for something a little bit larger, in like a 2-inch or 2.5-inch jaws, which are harder to find out in the wild. And then this one came up. It looked like it was in fantastic shape. And the jaws are only 1.5 inches wide. and the thing opens up. I think I could get it to about 1.5 inches capacity in there.
Yep.
There's a little catch in the threads right around 1.25 inches. So I think that's more or less its maximum. And I was afraid that it would be too small. And when I got it in the mail, opened it up, it was like, oh, it's a little baby vise. What do you want to be when you grow up? But I think it's going to end up being just right because of the fact that it's small. That when you start getting larger with the vices, there's
Clunky.
like this inverse square proportionality of how much they weigh,
Yeah.
And it's going to be like, do I want to get out this 45-pound vise in order to hold this tiny little hinge so that I can re-drill holes on it or whatever? Whereas this little guy, I can just kind of keep in a drawer and pull out and use whenever. So
yeah.
It
ended up had the original box and stuff. Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder how old it is. John, when I brought it in the other day, John was wondering too, like, it just seems like it's pretty old, but it's also in fantastic shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like brand new, but the box looks like, I don't know, pre-World War II or around that time, or I don't know. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know if is that a Yankee brand?
Yeah, it is. North Brothers Yankee 991. So I don't know if anybody old tool aficionados out there, if you know how to carbon date these things to figure out exactly how old. I mean, there's no dates on the box that I saw, or nothing on the casting, and the imprint of the tool name and whatever on the side of the tool is in great shape. So it doesn't look like one of those tools where it's like, I got this really rusty and I spent 45 minutes on a wire wheel and munged it all up, like it's tight.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it's labeled as North Brothers.
Yeah. North Brothers Yankee in quotes.
So this is you're in the realm that I love to live in, Phil, right now, because right now I found a Yankee tool catalog book from 1920, and I'm just looking to see if I can find oh yeah, there it is. That's a 990, a 993. That's a 993. There's no 991
so anyway,
there.
it's as Logan's looking there, what I thought was interesting, because I was doing some car repair at the time, and my wife brought out the box and she goes, guess what came today? She goes, also, it's really small. And I was,
you're like,
and then that was the thing,
size.
is like,
it's
right.
normal sized.
And I opened the box and it was both smaller than I thought and just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was
but it is heavy for how small it is. It's got a good weight to it.
Yeah. So anyway, if anybody out there knows how to find the date on it, or if Logan finds it, we'll put a link to the catalog here. So
yeah, that's one thing about these, the Internet Archives. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, here we go. 1931.
So there's one. So
it's published in the 1931 North Brothers Manufacturing Company Yankee catalog. So
okay,
yeah, Vice's number 991-234. So I will screenshot this so we can put that up.
Okay,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So anyway, there you go. I'm excited about it. Like I said, I've been working on my drill press, and I was trying to figure out a way to describe what I was doing with my drill press and why. And I think it was more in terms of turning it into like a work center. Like, I want to be able to do good work at my drill press, have all the things nearby that I use at the drill press, instead of viewing it just as a fixed place where a drill sits.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's a mindset thing.
Yeah. So this is super interesting. It shows all the specs for the 991 through the 994. You said you think you can get 1.5 inches on it?
Yeah.
Because that's what it's listed as maximum.
Okay. Yeah, there's
1
like
pound,
a little
6 ounces.
Yeah.
And
awesome. And it came with a little block for drilling into round pieces where it's got like little V grooves in it, both directions.
This is that's shown in the catalog as well. The net weight on the 994, which is 3 sizes up, is 28 pounds 6 ounces.
Right.
Which would be huge.
Yeah. And it's relatively easy to find drill press vices that have the angle attachment or feature to it where you can adjust the angle. And I have a hard enough time just drilling square into something. I don't need to introduce angles. So, and that felt like and again, those ended up starting to get to be much bigger accessories. So
does the catalog give a 1930s price? What it would?
It does
probably
not,
in like pence or something.
It doesn't, because usually they do. Usually these old tool catalogs give prices in like because these weren't consumer catalogs, right? These were catalogs for like a hardware store to order. So usually they'll give you in the half dozen and a half, and 2 dozen prices. Yeah. But this one does not. So that would be interesting to know what the new price was if you're going to go buy it, down at like the Diamond hardware store on the corner,
Yeah.
But
I think it came on the Wells Fargo wagon.
Probably, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, got a question for you guys. As I'm moving stuff around in my shop, I have a couple pieces of equipment that are big, but one is kind of sitting there, and I just don't know if I'm going to use it that much. Do you guys feel like in your standard workflow, if one was set up in there and we have one in the shop, would you guys use a drum sander on a regular basis?
Probably.
John's saying yes.
Like the spindle sander, you mean?
No, like we have the Powermatic drum
like
sander.
A panel sander.
The thickness sander.
Yeah.
Any machine that will do sanding, I would take. Sign me up.
Can't argue with that. Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah. Because it's like I have this big Bailey, the 25-incher, right?
Yeah.
And I want to know from people listening, like, is that something you have? Is it something you've dreamed of? If you bought it, did you actually use it like you thought you would? Because more or less, I have nothing into this Bailey. Okay. I bought a bunch of equipment, sold some of it off, and I paid for what I, had into it. So more or less, I have this Bailey that was unused at no cost to me. So I have this 25-inch sander. It's on a mobile base. I can roll it around. It's kind of awkward. It takes 2 4-inch dust ports. It creates a boatload of dust.
Right.
I have used it once, and it has dual drums. So technically, you could put like an 80 grit and a 120 in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess to preface my answer, I would say I don't know that I would invest my own money and my own space to go out and get one. But if I had one, I would probably use it. Like I use the panel sander in the shop all the time, but it's not my money, not my shop. So, and I'm not buying the sandpaper. So, but yes.
Well, and that's another consideration. Those rolls of sandpaper are pretty expensive. Now it's, as I said, it's on a mobile base. I could roll it out into the storage area, but then it's one of those like out of sight, out of mind type things, right?
Yeah.
Where if it's out there, you're not going to use it.
Right. Because it's going to turn into a hassle to bring it in.
That's right. So I'm just trying to decide if it has a place in my shop or not. Yeah. It's not currently set up in a permanent spot. I did just order dust collection for my shop. So that will be a whole nother topic at some point, doing hard piping dust collection. And in the layout, I did include having it in there. Okay. So I have the pipe for it. I have where I could potentially set it up. the other consideration is it's basically a planer for the footprint, right? You need in-feed and out-feed on it. And you maybe not send in huge pieces through it, but you still need probably a good 40 to 50 inches of in-feed and out-feed on it, even more if you're doing a tabletop. So
yeah,
I need input on whether or not it makes sense to have it in here or not. And I don't want to hear get rid of one of your lathes or get rid of one of your bandsaws, because I don't have time for that nonsense in my life.
Okay. I wasn't going to say that, but because I could see, having used the one here, I can see the practicality of it. Because I've used it, especially on, it's funny because like we'll use it on big panel glue ups. Like if we're doing something for the TV show, I know John will run it through there just to level out glue joints pretty quickly. And but then I've also used it on really small things too, where you're trying to get like little dividers that theoretically you can run through your planer, but theoretically also get chewed up into dog food when you run it through the planer too.
Well, and that's kind of the one consideration that I'm thinking about, is that sander's 25 inches. My planer's 18. So technically I could use it as a 25-inch thickness sander, to kind of level out wider panels. I know like the big one that we had in the shop, we had a Supermax in there at one
something
point
like that. Yeah.
And Kurt had bought it, and it was a big one. Like I think that one was like a 30 or a 36. Like it was a big one. Yeah. And he's like, I use this more than I use my planer because this is way faster. I'm like, boy, that's a lot of money in sandpaper, unless you're just picking up the sand that's left in the parking lot and making your own, But, it's one of those things. It's just right, because right now it's sitting in the middle of the shop because I was doing some outlet work when Pat was here, and I pushed it away from the wall. And I'm like, what do I do with this? What do I do with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
all right. Yeah. We'll look forward to that. We'll we'll read comments from that on our next episode. So that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. Questions, comments, smart remarks, we want to hear them all. You can put them on the comments section on our YouTube channel. Send us an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com, referencing the podcast number. This is episode 184. Coming up on 200 in a little bit. So special thanks to Grizzly Industrial for sponsoring today's episode and for sponsoring the upcoming season of the Woodsmith Shop TV show. You can check out all of their selections from woodworking to metalworking to gunsmithing and more over at grizzly.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.